Hi, and welcome to Thor's Day Comics. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee. And coming in September from Image Comics, Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, starring Adam Starr and the Solar Legion. All three of those books are available for pre-order by following the pre-order links in the show notes below. So this is a coverless copy of THOR Annual #1, When Titans Clash, Thor versus Hercules. Mighty story by Stan Lee, majestic art by Jack Kirby, masterful inking by Vince Colletta, mostly lettered by Sam Rosen. And as always, Jack Kirby is also the co-writer of this story, even though that's not spelled out in the credits. So what an introduction. This is the first appearance of the Marvel Comics version of Hercules. And he looks great. It's a great costume, very interesting and intricate and simple at the same time. Sort of that line that Jack Kirby straddles. You can tell he designed Hercules after Thor, that Thor, Jack Kirby, as he becomes more and more the Jack Kirby we know, his aesthetic goes more and more into that kind of direction. So like this kind of cool looking headdress, helmet with like the hair visible on top, like you'd see on a New God, this intricately designed club, and then these, sort of like lattice work boots. And the two, characters are squaring off with each other. And the focus is on Hercules. He's the new guy in town. So Thor is like a little bit, cropped by the panel border. So this is a story that takes place, it's almost like an extended Tales of Asgard. It takes place in that era of, before the first Thor story. And it's, his youth with, his young adulthood with Loki before he and Loki became arch enemies. In the caption box, it talks about how there's no recorded record of Thor ever meeting Hercules, in the mythology, in the Eddas, or Homer never talks about it. But if they had, we imagine it might have gone a little something like this. And so there's some storm giants trying to dig a way to Olympus, because the legends tell us that the storm giants were hurled out of Olympus ages ago. Thus, it is my duty to prevent them from ever returning. The Norse mythology is newer than the Greek mythology, and so there's a lot of overlap, a lot of similar characters. And so the idea is that, maybe they're both sort of telling stories of sort of, themes and issues that are just, part of the human psyche maybe, and what I think is more likely, that the Norse myths are partially based on the Greek myths. But, that's sort of, being debated to this day. And so, we have these really interestingly designed giants. I don't think we ever actually see this one's face. He's got kind of like a Beatles haircut, almost like he's got a coconut on his head, but we never see his face. But Thor's fighting with him. It's a pretty, well-drawn fight scene. He splits the giant spear in half. And then when Thor, does the last, smash, it creates a cave-in that sends him through a sort of, cosmic gateway, which is rendered in sort of, rainbow hues, making it sort of akin to the Rainbow Bridge, those are like the colors you see when you transport from one dimension to another. And now he finds himself in this, really, beautifully rendered ancient temple. We saw in the previous issues, Jack drew some really cool looking old temples, and here's another chance, and it's got some, cave paintings on the wall and stuff. And then when he gets out, it's got this really amazing looking gate, and he realizes he's in Olympus. And I like the look of Olympus. I like the centaurs and the pan. This is, Jack Kirby's chance to design a parallel Asgard. But that Olympus is the Marvel Asgard, but with a Greco-Roman flavor. And, that must have been a pretty fun exercise for Kirby. I imagine, had he stayed with Thor long enough and been inspired to do so, he could have done this with, every imaginable world mythology. Alan Moore and Rick Veitch did a really great job of doing essentially that, but with Egyptian mythology in the Horus issue of the 1963 miniseries. Thor has to cross a bridge, but crossing at the other side is Hercules. And so we have another, we've been quoting all kinds of mythologies. Now we're quoting the Robin Hood myth, where, when Robin Hood meets Little John and they're, crossing a bridge and neither one wants to yield to the other. But this is a sort of hyped up Jack Kirby superhero version. So Hercules, just flips the whole bridge, sends Thor hurtling into the water, throws a boulder at him, makes a big splash. He lifts up another boulder and Thor smashes it over his head. Now the fight's on. He throws his hammer, snags on Hercules' hand, but Hercules seems okay with it. Hercules is sort of set up as Olympus's equivalent to Thor, but the hammer goes flying back to Thor, and then things go, all Kirby here. Hercules, sends this like smashing punch at Thor, and they're getting all tangled up with each other, and Hercules is surprised by how well Thor recovers, and the fight goes on. Each one, sort of surprised by what a match the other is. Hercules takes this post and twists it up. Again, like I love all these little Greco-Roman design flourishes in here. I mean, Kirby really seemed to be having a field day with this. This is becoming Kirby's stock in trade and becoming Marvel's stock in trade, these really inventively choreographed fight scenes that you let sort of go on and have their space to unfold. Because really, what else are you looking for from one of these comics? Hercules keeps hitting Thor in the same spot, and it's hurting. Thor grabs the sod and pulls it like a carpet to trip up Hercules. Hercules takes these two rocks, smashes them together. The dust gets in. It's a dust up. The dust gets in Thor's eyes. The fight continues, and it could go on and on. There's no sign of either one slowing down. And then this is a really beautiful panel. The color, the rendering. Again, it's not a typical Kirby look. Like it looks like something else, and I really like that. I like that it's so different from everything that surrounds it. Really makes this moment important, really, when their fight is broken up by this explosion. Vince Colletta deserves some of the credit, because this is a way of handling Jack Kirby's pencils that I don't see any other of his inkers doing. It's a nice collaboration in this moment. And then we get the reveal of who caused this explosion. It was Zeus. First appearance of Marvel's Zeus. And, if Hercules is the Thor of Olympus, then Zeus is its Odin, this all-powerful thunder god. The way that, Odin was master of thunder before he, handed his hammer over to Thor. Odin could control the thunder at any time he wants, but he entrusts that responsibility with his son. They shake hands, and they're two gentlemen. They decide to be, friends in spite of all that. They have much more in common than their differences. And so then Zeus sends Thor back and meets up with Loki and asks Loki, like, where were you when the shit went down, when all the fighting was happening? And then a bunch of rocks start stacking up, and it's Zeus from the other side covering up the interdimensional entrance that leads between Asgard and Olympus. And Thor decides to keep all this a secret from his brother. He just has a feeling that things would be better off if Loki didn't know about this. Thus, the god of thunder keeps his secret locked within him. But one day that secret will be exposed, and when it is, we shall all share the thrills together. So again, in terms of plot, it's nothing, groundbreaking. But if you think about the particulars, we introduce, a whole new world full of characters to explore that, Thor, finds a gateway towards. So again, opening up, sort of like bookmarking, this world for future use. And then just designing all of it and coming, and having Jack Kirby and Stan Lee didn't invent, the idea of a god of thunder called Thor, but they invented this particular version. This is its own unique creation, and they do the same with Hercules and with Zeus. So we're seeing this universe being expanded issue to issue with each issue. I'm sure that Superman met Hercules. I can only imagine how it would be handled compared to this, where this creates like a very credible new fantasy world for the characters to play in. The real estate that they devote to the fight was also unconventional. In superhero comics, usually a fight would be resolved in a panel or two, but there's really something new and interesting going on here, letting these fights linger and give the characters opportunity to show what they're made of, to reveal character within action. Just beautifully drawn. It's just like a wonder to behold. And it's a 15-page story, all done in one. So it's the longest Tales of Asgard we've gotten so far, and it's got a nice little beginning, middle, and ending. Just a treat. A Thor bonus feature. Anytime Jack Kirby does this, it's always a spectacle. It's always great. We get a map, a panoramic drawing of the layout of Asgard, of Kirby's Asgard. And I was always disappointed in the Thor movies that they made, sort of more, they made more of sort of a generic fantasy world of the Asgard in the movies. But I would have liked a more, sort of Kirby-specific Asgard. It's just really beautiful, and the colors too, and the a wonderland of shapes. You could just sort of spend a lot of time just sort of imagining the ins and outs of this place. We have the Temple of Titans, the Warlock's Haven, a giant bust of Odin, Yggdrasil Tree of Life Monument, Monument to the Unknown Warrior, Dome of Combat, Hall of Heroes, Museum of Weaponry, 2 shopping center. Now that feels to me like it might be like a little bit of a joke, but I mean, of course, Asgardians need to shop too. But it's all it what it also recalls. It recalls Kirby's sort of formative youth experience of visiting the World's Fair. This seems very influenced by the World's Fair, and there's sort of like World of Tomorrow, and there's North, East, West, and then to Earth. Just a lot going on here, just really wonderful. And then we get a reprint of the first appearance of Loki, which we covered in a previous issue. And then the Radioactive Man, which we also covered. We got one of those Joe Sinnott issues, one of those Joe Sinnott stories, which are sort of, largely forgettable and feel much more akin to like a DC Comics superhero story than what Jack Kirby was doing at this time. And here's Thor helping to sell the other comics in the Marvel line. Oh, and then, this issue is chock full. We get Thor battles the Lava Man. The one that was drawn by Jack Kirby and inked by Don Heck. First appearance of the Lava Man. Lava Man looking very much like a Jack Kirby self-portrait there. Looking at these older stories like the Lava Man, just seeing how far we've come with this comic and just thinking about, how far this Thor's Day comic series has come. All these months have gone by pretty fast, and I'm sure the years went by fast as Jack was working on this, and as people who are around at this time reading this comic must have seen this. This probably felt as much like ancient history back then as it obviously does now. Looking at this, severely aged comic from what, more than a half a century ago. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, and coming in September from Image Comics, Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, starring Adam Starr and the Solar Legion. All 3 of those books are available for pre-order by following the pre-order links in the show notes below. I'll see you next Thursday.